Welcome to the September edition of the CaTS monthly webinar. I'll be brief with introductions. My name is David Alexander. I'm with the Cyber Infrastructure Enhancement Corps, and with me is Connie Murla, who's also in cyber infrastructure. And special guest this month, hopefully a returning contributor, is Megan Bronson from Tulane, who's our CaTS Research Navigator. So I'm going to hand it over to Megan in just a second, but before I do that, I'm going to, I want to go ahead and cover some material from last month that we talked about. There was a question about the REDCap Mobile App. And that question, if you remember, we talked about the data being encrypted within the mobile app. You unencrypt it when you key in your PIN to access the app. So the question was, does the data remain on board after syncing? And we were able to do a little bit more testing with the app, and the answer is yes. When you want to sync the data from the mobile app to your REDCap server, use an option called Send Data to Server, and it only looks at the new and modified data. You can send all of the data that you've added since the last sync, or just a subset if there's a tremendous amount you only are interested in syncing a little bit at one time. So you have control over that, and that's the screenshot that I placed there about begin a send of all or a send of a partial set of records. And data that's already been sent to the server remains on the device. So it's there until you choose to remove it. And I included these screenshots because I thought they might be of interest to you all as well. When you decide to send the data, you actually get a choice to send all displayed records or selectively pick those records you wish to sync. So this gives you a lot of granular control as to what goes to the server and when. And if you look back at our August webinar, you'll see there's a lot of logging that goes on in the server about when this was received, even GPS marking about where it was received from. So lots of good audit trail is put in place with the sync process. And then something that while doing this I discovered, which I thought you might find interesting, since the first use of the app and this use of the app, I actually changed the instrument on the REDCap server. And the app determined that I had changed it and said, you need to refresh this project in the app. I didn't force this to happen. The app told me this. And so I went ahead and refreshed the project within the app. It guided me through that. And then when I was done with the refresh, so I had the new changes from the instrument in place within my app. REDCap asked me, do you want to download all 5 records in this project? Do you want to download by a status, like only those that are complete or incomplete? Do you want to get a partial set, or just keep it empty and don't download any records? So I thought, again, nice features that have been added there with the mobile app support, and that's all available built into to the REDCap mobile app. So I think it's very useful. And as I mentioned, we didn't do a lot of work with it this month, but as we do more work with it, I'm happy to share those, and I hope I answered the question from last time. So that being said, that was my sort of catch up. I want to hand it over to Megan, and I don't know, here Megan, give control of this. Okay, great. And I'm going to step out and let Megan take over.
There we are. Now we're unmuted. Now can everybody hear me?
Right. Yes.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you so much, David, for letting me join you guys today. I appreciate the opportunity to let you know what I created in REDCap recently. A little bit of background about me and why I'm not just a research navigator, but I'm here presenting on REDCap. Is my previous position, I had a lot of REDCap experience at the LSU School of Public Health. So I am here to show you what else can be done besides regular data collection. So I'm obviously the research navigator, specifically in the professional development core, part of CaTS. And I'm going to tell you about the seminar workshop feedback survey using REDCap. Okay. I think the slides are going to work.
How are you?
How about now?
Okay.
They worked before, of course.
Of course it did in our. I'm going to say Control Alt Space. Okay. Try it again, Megan. There you go.
There we go. All right. So I want to bring your attention to our director and co-directors, Dr. Fonseca, Dr. Gregory, and Dr. Brantley of our core, as well as the women who teach me everything I need to know, Denise LaRoche and Megan Dunwar. Couldn't do any of this without them. So specifically, I was tasked with disseminating the seminar workshop feedback survey, and it was created and redesigned by the CaTS Tracking and Evaluation Core with input from some of the other cores, including the Health Literacy Core. It came to me as a Word version as well as a PDF version, but the Word version allowed me to customize the form with the core name, the event title, the event date. It's a rather short form, luckily. It's a 1 page and has 6 questions with the additional optional contact info at the bottom of the page. And it's really an important document because it's how we measure our reach as well as how we can easily solicit ideas for next activities when we are conducting seminars, workshops, various lectures. So here's a couple screenshots of what the form looks like. You can see it's a standard Likert scale question at the top, and then what would be a multi-choice question if it was electronic. And then the second half of the question, the survey, asks for some comments and what else you think you can learn, you would like us to teach you. Okay. So specifically, I was tasked with disseminating the survey at a recent NIH grant writing workshop that Dr. Gregory was conducting. So Dr. Paula Gregory of the LSU HSC New Orleans School of Medicine, and her attendees at this workshop were LSU Health Sciences Center Shreveport and LSU Shreveport clinicians, postdocs, and graduate students. And ended up being 3 separate events within the workshop over a 2-day period. There was a lecture on Tuesday afternoon. It was about an hour long. So we then moved to one-on-one sessions, which were split up. There were about 30-minute interviews where Dr. Gregory was working with individuals on their grant submissions. Half of them were Tuesday afternoon. The other half were midday on Wednesday. And then we also, Dr. Gregory conducted a mock study section on Wednesday morning. And so that was about 14 people. It took about 2 hours. So we were there just last week. So it was last Tuesday and Wednesday. And we traveled up to the LSU Shreveport School of Medicine. All right. And so one of the reasons to not use a paper survey, well, many reasons actually, but the first one for me is the environmental impact. I just don't like using paper any longer. None of us should. It's easy to lose the forms or damage them. Who hasn't spilled coffee accidentally on their pile of papers on their desks? It's tedious to do the manual data entry afterwards. There's room for human error. There's the confusion about someone's awful handwriting. What exactly does that say? And of course, if someone does have plenty of comments to make, there's not always enough space for those. And so it can be frustrating for the responder. Okay. And so, but there are some reasons to actually use paper. It's easier to force the attendees to complete. An anecdote was shared with me before I attended about the previous navigator essentially barring the doors, blocking the doors with her own body until surveys had been completed and returned to her. And I'll be honest, I did the same thing. It's hard to look me in the eye and not fill out the piece of paper. It's true. So maybe there's still a reason to not fully use REDCap, but I'm undaunted. I'm going to move forward. How can REDCap save the day? So REDCap is it's all electronic, so there's no manual data entry afterwards. I was able to design and test the new form in the REDCap project in just a few hours. Luckily, Connie was a godsend and lifesaver and ended up approving my changes over and over again. So her quick response made this all possible. So thank you, Connie. There was easy access to the Pennington REDCap system once I had a Wi-Fi connection. And so that a little thing to keep in mind is that if I hadn't had access to the internet, I would have certainly needed to make use of the REDCap mobile app, and so made sure I previously had set up a device that was going to let me collect the data offline. I had enough confidence and communication with the event organizers that I was going to be able to join the Shreveport guest Wi-Fi without any problems, and I did successfully. So, can REDCap save the day? Ooh, David, this is going to be exciting. Let's see if this is going to work. No. Okay, so what I did is I created a video about how I was able to input new survey participants on the fly. For those of you that are familiar with creating, adding new participants and creating new survey invitations, it's nothing radical. David, do you think I should show it or just move on?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and show it on yours.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and you'll go ahead and pick up your sharing.
Sounds great.
Okay, good deal. We'll try this with the technology. Here we go.
All right, so it automatically opened on this reports window in REDCap because that's the last window I was on. But this is my project. So the CATS Workshop Professional Development Resources Alamo. I inherited from the previous Navigator, Inez Alamo. Thanks, Inez. So what's important, the steps that I took to be able to distribute this survey quickly while I was in Shreveport was I was using the Manage Survey Participants function. And so you click there, and then you go to your participant list. And in this case, what I created first was an Excel document, in all honesty. I used sign-in sheets and then typed as quickly and quietly as possible in the back of the room everybody's email. So for the lecture that was about 30 participants, I then used the Add Participants feature, and at that point I copied and pasted, but today I'll just type my own in. And so added all the different email addresses, clicked Add Participants, yay, and then went to the Compose Survey Invitations, and then shows all the different features. So I decided I did want it to be sent immediately. I thought it was a good idea that the feedback survey was waiting for people as they exited the lecture. So I chose immediately. I then also wanted to send reminders because maybe someone just got busy, but they would be willing to do it in the future. So I chose to resend reminders 1 day and 4 hours in advance. One of the things to remember when you're sending reminders is not to send it exactly at the same time at the same day. Because if they couldn't do it then the first time, it's quite likely your respondents won't be able to do it again the second time you send it at the exact same time. So I chose 2 reminders. This isn't a life or death type survey. I thought anything more than that would be onerous and annoying. So I chose just 2 reminders. I kept the default from address, and then I'm just going to type in some test language here, but originally it said NIH Grant Workshop Feedback Survey. Of course, choose an appropriate subject. That it's eye-catching. All right. That's the email content. One of the other things to remember too, and luckily it's suggested here at the bottom, is the use of different HTML formatting. One of the things I always like to do is include contact information for the office or for myself, so that people, when they have that, light bulb go off, can still reach out to me, even if it has nothing to do with the specific feedback survey questions. They can still find a way to reach me. So I use a lot of the href link to at least get my email address active in there. All right, so you've got some real content and you're ready to send your survey invitation. You're gonna wanna choose the right people. And right now it's telling me that one person's selected, but I can't see anyone selected. Oh, there I am. So here's me. Here's my other tests, obviously. And so since I'm satisfied that the right people are selected, I'm just going to hit send invitations. All right, and I get a confirmation window saying REDCap did its part. The email is out there. And now we just have to hope that someone's going to respond. So, all right, David, I'll stop presenting and let's go back to those slides.
All right, sounds good. Start share. Share. Okay, let me know when you can see it.
Thinking a little harder. All right, there we go.
I'm going to give it back to you as a presenter.
Okay.
All right, you should have it.
All right. Maybe.
It seemed like it was a little bit slow to start last time as well.
I agree.
So, get control automatically. Okay.
There we go. All right. So, can REDCap save the day? Well, the important things to remember is that it's important to develop buy-in via a 10-second or less explanation. These people weren't here to listen to me talk about how important my feedback survey is. They wanted to hear Dr. Gregory's advice about grant writing. How am I going to balance their original need being there with, oh no, these 6 questions are so important to me. So it's important that you've got your right elevator speech prepared, as well as now just wait. So my waiting is over. The 2 days that I gave everyone for their reminders and whatnot has passed. So I have some of my results maybe on the next slides.
Yeah, I just clicked for you.
There you go. Perfect. Okay. So, did REDCap actually save the day? I received 21 completed survey responses, so that's a great start. It technically worked. People were able to actually click on it and submit surveys. So, okay. But the first 2 responses are test responses for me. So it's really not that many responses. And then there were 2 additional ones that didn't click and choose an event title. So with some deductive work, I could figure out exactly which event they were at, but that's not an example of it working, in my opinion. For whatever reason, they didn't complete the entire survey. So now we're down to 17 completed survey responses. Well, 17's not terrible, but there were 30 names on the lecture sign-in, 14 on the mock study section, and 3 for the one-on-one sessions. For anyone doing the math quickly, that's 47 potential responses. 17 out of 47 is not pretty. That's not a great response rate. So, undaunted, I dug a little deeper. How did it break down per session? So for the lecture, for the 30 participants we had on the sign-in sheet, how did I feel about it? Well, we only had 4 responses. 4 out of 30. Ugh. Well, we had 4 out of 30 because, that measly 13%, because I gave out paper versions. This is the first session I was at. There were the most number of people in the room. I felt most confident that if anyone was going to ignore the REDCap surveys, it would be this audience. So I gave out paper surveys. I blocked the door, and I received 20 completed paper surveys. And I hope you can hear the joking in my voice. It was never a fire hazard. Everyone could leave of their own free will. It wasn't endangering anyone's life. So, but with 20 completed surveys, plus the 4 REDCap surveys, it gets us to 24 completed surveys. 24 out of 30 ain't bad, ladies and gentlemen. I'll take an 80% response rate. Caveat here, though, is the surveys are technically anonymous, especially the paper surveys. Technically, the REDCap surveys aren't anonymous because I have them linked to their email addresses. But now I run the risk of there's duplication. What if there's a really wonderful person who decided to take it twice? I won't know on their paper surveys which ones to exclude. So it's not perfect, but I'm still at 80%. I'm happy with 80%. All right, so let's take a look at the one-on-one sessions. It looks like of the 10 people, only 3 responded electronically. So that's not good either. But I'm less upset about this poor response rate only 30%, because I only invited 3 people to take it via the REDCap survey. So the way the one-on-one sessions worked is I was essentially literally the gatekeeper. I opened the door for the conference room that Dr. Gregory was using. So people had to walk past me twice. So that allowed me to both use their time to sign in and physically hand them a piece of paper. Once I had a working relationship with these folks, because it was the same people I was seeing at the lecture, at the sessions, at the mock study section, I felt more comfortable saying, would you prefer to do this electronically? I can send it to you. So the first 6 folks I asked to do it on paper, and then the second day I asked 3 of those participants to complete the REDCap surveys. So of those 3, all 3 completed, and that brought us to a total of 9 surveys, giving us a 90% overall completion rate. I'm really happy with 90%. Thanks, everybody. Full disclosure, I was on the other side of the building when one of the people left the session, so he got away before I could get to him. So, all right, and then lastly for the mock study section, how did that work? So the mock study section was a small group session. It was about 2 hours in length, and it was the 3rd session. And again, they were repeat customers essentially at this point. They had seen Dr. Gregory, they had seen me, they were a little more comfortable around us. So I was able to actually cajole 10 people to complete their REDCap surveys. I'm just right out of the gate, I'm ecstatic about that. 71%, that's a relief. One of the things that worked for the one-on-one session is that I was reminding them every time we took a break to just have a water or switch topics. I shouted from the back of the room, don't forget to do your surveys. Everyone got their email, right? So that added to our higher response rates. One person did offer to take it via paper, so there's 1 paper survey for me to enter. But I was certainly able to gain their buy-in and their trust by that point, so it worked well. All right, so with that being our results, and our final response rate for the mock study section was 79%. Pretty good. I'll take it. All right, so did REDCap actually save the day? Not completely, but I don't feel it was a bust. I'm excited that REDCap's going to be the final data repository for all of the information, so I'll be able to create reports for everything pretty quickly. And it'll be easy to compare results between different events. And so this is the first time I've accompanied Dr. Gregory on a grant writing workshop, but there'll be other times that as Research Navigator I'm presenting or someone else is presenting, and it'll be nice to have everything in one single location for data reporting needs. And it was relatively easy to customize the form and add new event titles. Granted, that's because I've already gone through the REDCap design learning curve. So that gives me a quick step up than other users, but it still makes my job a lot easier. All right, so my lessons learned, it's really going to be important to communicate how important these surveys are to me while not negating the importance of the topic that the participants are actually there to participate in. So it's going to be important to also explain how it will work. It's entirely possible people aren't used to receiving feedback surveys in their email. Maybe I should make sure they understand it. So I'll need to I should beg for clearer handwriting on the sign-in sheets. One of the things I noticed after the fact is I received 7 undeliverable error messages. You know, when the mailer daemon, whatever that is, sends you something that this email does not exist. That's because I couldn't read the handwriting correctly and I entered an email address that does not exist. So, but it was definitely easier to achieve buy-in amongst the smaller work groups. And it's going to be important to remember that the paper surveys may always play a role. So. All right, things I'd like to try next is some form of an electronic sign-in. So I don't know if I need a fleet of iPads, which doesn't sound easy to obtain, but if there's something else that I can set up so that people can quickly sign in and move on to their next station, whether that's the cookies or a seat in the audience. But how can I make it so that I don't have to try and decipher handwriting? and as early and often as possible, alert people about how important the survey is, and that I find great value from it. Okay, so if anyone had any other suggestions, I would love to hear from anyone. What else do you think I could try to get a higher participation rate?
Oh, Megan, I'm all ears, and I might recruit you for our PubMed crawl process, because we dangle around that 30% rate all the time. So I'd love to hear your input when we start to redesign that thing.
Sure.
But I did have a question for you. Did you notice that any of your automated reminders, the ones that fired off a day and a few hours later, did you get any responses from those? Did that work well for you?
I did, absolutely. And I think the easiest way to see it, and I'm not going to show my screen again, but I know on when I made the reports, I included the timestamp for when the surveys came in.
Nice.
And so I know on at least one of the reports, yeah, on the mock study section, the timestamp was for September 21st and September 23rd. So that's 2 and 4 days after the session had ended. So yes, the reminders worked.
Go ahead. That's great.
Yeah, and then, again, that's not everybody. We need to be able to have, a lot of different customizable options that, some people are going to respond immediately. Some people are going to respond to the third reminder, but how do we balance it all? An important thing to remember, too, is that REDCap is only sending reminders to those that have not yet responded. So it's not unnecessarily inundating people who've already completed. So,
Nice.
Okay. All right. And then I think we might be done. Or I had one more slide, but it's not critical. Are there any other questions?
Any in the chat window?
I was curious, Megan, about when you were composing the email to your survey, to your survey recipients. You said something about how to get your email address in the introduction email that you were sending them.
Yes, ma'am.
How did you say you had done that?
Sure. So what you do is the href email tag. And I'll be honest, I learned this through Googling. I was really curious about how everyone else's emails could show up as just a clickable link. And so, yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. I've never gone through a computer science course, so if someone wants to correct me, please feel free. But it's the A space, and then literally the letters AHREF equals, and then the open quote mail to. Connie, I can certainly follow up and send you an email if you'd like to see an example.
Okay, yeah, that's I heard you say something about a link, and I didn't hear what you said at the beginning. So you just put in the HTML to make your email clickable.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right. Well, on that note, then, I just want to thank you again, David and Connie, for all your help and for the opportunity to talk to you guys today. And Sylvia was invaluable in making sure that I was using the correct form, so thank you to her. And of course, Dr. Gregory, without me letting me tag along, there wouldn't have been a need for me to have feedback surveys or give this presentation. And then up in Shreveport, working with Dr. Liz Disbrow and Dr. Terry Davis and Dr. Connie Arnold, they are invaluable resources that are really promoting a lot of good research opportunities in Shreveport. So big shout out to those three women. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, Megan, that was really great. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, please come back. We'd love to have you again.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can do something more interesting next time. But thanks.
A good deal. Okay, so I've got control back here.
Okay, great.
Good deal. Okay, thank you. Well, great. Well, I'll take us into the next topic we had for today, which is Intro to the REDCap API. This is a feature of REDCap that we talk about a lot, but we haven't had a lot of experience with. So I'm kind of a newbie on this, but I wanted to share what I found in the API space. So I think a good way to start is to say, well, what is not just the REDCap API, but what's an API if you're not familiar with an API. So an API is an application programming interface, and that's just a way for external tools, things outside of REDCap, to communicate with REDCap. And I'll show you on the next slide what you're able to do. It's pretty exciting, really, if you've ever wanted to automate some things or schedule some things outside of REDCap. I think you might find this interesting. What sort of tools can interact with REDCap? Well, there's lots of languages right out the box. I'm sure there are other ways, but these are the ones that REDCap supports in a pretty neat way, and I'll show you that a little later when we do our demo. But PHP, Perl, Python. For today, I'll show you in a statistical package called R, but I'll show you the success I had with it. And there I hinted at this. So what can you do? Well, you can import. Sometimes you can export or even delete items within a REDCap project, and that can take the form of arms of studies, events, field names, files, data dictionaries, so whole dictionaries for a project, entire projects. You can create projects through an automated fashion if that were something you needed to do a lot of. And we're going to do an example today of actually importing and exporting records. So in case you ever needed to get your REDCap data out of REDCap on a scheduled basis or something like that, I'll show you a way to do that, as well as reports and surveys and users. So I mentioned a few ways that that the API would be useful, but you know, maybe there's other ways. Maybe there are other things that you particularly need. You know, I'd love to hear about them. One thing that came to mind while I was typing this was, what if you wanted to do version control on your data dictionaries? I don't know. Maybe that would be a way to actually save revisions along the way, so you could see a history of how your project has changed. So that I think the more you see about this, you might have some more ideas. But that's just a few that that came to mind with me. So what do you need to start? Well, an API key. And if you ever look down the side of your REDCap navigation, you'll see towards the bottom there's an API playground area that's posted. And this key, this token, this long string of characters here, think of it as your user ID and your password for the specific project that you're in. So this only works within this project. So me being an admin, this will not go outside of the project and affect other projects. It's only going to affect the project that I was in, this demo project that I'm in for today's exercise. And that's important to know because it's granular. And in the event that you were to, let's say, publish your token in a webinar where a lot of other people could see it, what you could do is just click on Regenerate Token, and that'll invalidate the one that's shown here and issue a new one. And now you have to use that token to do that. You have to change your code to use that token instead. I think this will become more clear as we go on. But once you request your API key, it is something you have to request from your REDCap admin, and your key will match what you're able to do within the project. So if you're able to export data out of a REDCap project, your key will allow you to do that. You don't gain anything by having an API key that you didn't already have, and that puts the admins at ease. So, and again, let's move on, and I think it'll make more sense when we do our hands-on piece. So once you have that API key in hand, you can progress to the API playground, which is right next door in the navigation. And I don't know a lot of Latin, but I think caveat emptor is really important at this point. Buyer beware, because within REDCap, if you do things like try to delete records or try to delete objects, you get a lot of warning messages that remind you about what you're about to do. When you use the API, this is meant to be executed by some code. There are no warnings that take place. So beware of what you're doing. If you delete objects while you're in the playground, you are deleting them from your project. So my advice here is do this while you're in development. Do this before you have production data in there. Do it in a development instance if you have a development instance. and practice and understand the way this is going to work, because it's very powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility. So just keep that in mind as you work with the API. And if you, there's a lot to read about all the different methods, and we'll see when we get to the code itself. But if you want to read more about the methods and capabilities of the API, just go on your own instance, go to /API/help, and that will show you the documentation that's available. It's very good, and I think you'll find this playground very impressive too. So let's go on ahead out, and I'll show you what it is that I'm talking about. So here we are. It's almost October, and everyone's going to be thinking about the World Series coming up. At least I am. So what we did for today, I took a data feed of the Baseball Hall of Fame players. And so I took all of this and I created a project to house this data. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and copy all of this data and go to REDCap. Now, one thing I could do within REDCap is, oh, it looks like I timed out. Here we go. Okay. One thing I could do within REDCap is use the import tool. First, I need to log in correctly. Okay. Good. So I could use the data import tool to import that CSV that I just showed you directly into my project. But what I'll do instead is go on down to the API playground and select, these are all those different methods that I talked about, and select under records. I'm going to import records. You see the screen change to allow me to import the records. And I'm going to say, well, this data that I'm going to import is in CSV format, and the data, all 257 rows of it, I'll insert into this data input box. And what this, right now, it's actually what REDCap is doing is parsing the data that I put in place and producing for me, here it is, yes, okay, producing for me a request that's going to do an insertion of all that data into REDCap. So this command that it's created for me by filling this data in will insert those 257 records into this project. So if I click on execute within REDCap, it's going to take just a second, and you'll see that a count of 257 records were returned. So just like that, I took the data from that spreadsheet, placed it into this API call, and executed it. And if we go to the Reports tab and click a View Report on all data, we'll see that the 257 records are now here within the REDCap project. So that's the way the API works within the REDCap API playground. Well, let's go back to the playground, and I'll show you what was produced for us. You saw this bit of code here, which is, they call it the raw request parameters. But if we scroll down a little further on the screen, you'll see that all those different programming languages that we talked about in the first slide are here. I mentioned that we're going to work with R. I click on the R tab. REDCap has actually produced for me a code snippet that'll do the insert within the R platform. So all I need to do now is copy this import and go to somewhere where I can write R code, and this will actually allow me to do that insert into REDCap from an external tool, namely R in this case, but there are other tools you can use as well. So before we jump over into R to show you that, I'll just show you a couple more methods. I mentioned that you can delete records. So if I click on delete records, REDCap produces for me another screen that's specific to deleting records, and you can see all the keys of all the Hall of Fame members are in this box. I'll highlight all of them, and you can see that the code snippet is updated to show the keys of those records we're going to delete. And now here's that warning I told you about. If I click on execute, I'm going to delete all the rows out of my project. So click it. And just like in the load, I get the number 257. So 257 records were deleted. I can prove that to you if I go back to the applications and view the report of all data. The report's now empty. So that's how you construct the code for use within the API. What you can do now is actually take that code out to your development environment and use it in another place. So let's leave REDCap for now. And what I'm going to use is a tool called RStudio. So RStudio is a development tool for creating scripts with R. But you could have just as easily gone to Python or PHP or Perl or any of those other languages that were mentioned and use the code there. So what I'm going to do is clear out our console window, click on the script to import the records. So here we are, we're looking at REDCap with the token that we obtained from our API, and then the same script that we ran in the window. But now here outside of REDCap, if I click on run, that code gets executed, and a result of 257 rows is returned to me within R. If I go back to visit REDCap, go to our data export report, and click on report, you'll see that there they are. The 257 rows have been reloaded, this time from R, completely without using REDCap, instead just using the REDCap API externally. So that's the use case where you would want to import data into REDCap. Let's say you have a bunch of data within REDCap and you need to export it to combine it with something else or load into a database, and you want to do it every day. So it's something you wouldn't want to go into REDCap and do manually every day. Well, you could go back to R. Here's a script that I created ahead of time to export records. And this came right out of the API playground. If I clear my console window again and run this script, this one takes a little while. Actually, I'm going to run it once more. I think it's actually running the line that I'm on, I'm sorry. Okay, there. So this time, as I've run that piece of code, you can see the CSV data that we started off with is all returned within the window. And if I was a good R programmer, I could take this data that I just extracted from REDCap and then turn around, maybe massage it or clean it up or do whatever needs to be done, and then push it into another data source. So that's just, I hope that was useful. That just shows a way that the API could be used from a tool like R. And if you're not familiar with R, it's not the only one. There are other tools that are available. So that is about everything I was going to show. I already showed you how to delete from the API. Did you all have any questions? Did that make sense? Okay.
David, that was really great. Thanks for showing that. I just had a quick question, a clarification. When you showed the API application back in REDCap, I'm not seeing that when I sign on. Is that?
Oh, okay.
Is that due to user rights?
You must need a minimum requirement of some user right to get to the first API level, and then once you have the key, I think the playground appears at that point. So so if you wanted to mess around with this, we could explore what that minimum is, and I can find that for next time as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it's something the admin has to enable.
The API right itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's why. That was my bad. But
okay.
Great.
Well, once you're in the club, it'll be fun.
Okay. Yeah. Then you can see, and the API playground, like I showed you, there's a lot of different things in there. So if there was a certain need that you might have, I think you can probably do it. And then I talked about automating the creation of projects. Like if you needed to create a lot of projects, that's beyond the scope of a single project, right? So that requires sort of a super user API, right? So that one, those would only be available to the highest level admins for obvious reasons. But okay, great question. Thank you, Megan. Let's see if I think. Okay, so we're back from the demo. Okay, and then I have the link here that Connie provided from REDCap Con 2018. I will put this in the YouTube video as well. Did you want to talk about it, Connie?
Yeah, this is just, I've been looking for the presentations from the conference, and I have not been able to find them. I'm going to reach out to one of the organizers and see where they are. But this was interesting because they do a poster contest at the conference. And these aren't necessarily the presentations, but it's use case scenarios that different people around the world have used REDCap, how they have used REDCap. And they create a poster of the problem they were trying to solve, how they solved it with REDCap, and what they learned. So it's a lot of information, but I thought you may be interested in just seeing how different people are using REDCap, because sometimes it will strike interest with you because of projects that you know are on your horizon. So I just wanted to share the link to these, and everybody should have access to it from the Project REDCap website.
That's great.
But yeah, I thought they were interesting. It's a lot of information, but if you could scroll through, something may jump out at you, and then it may spark more conversations for some of our future meetings like this, or some research on your own.
Yeah, this is good. It looks like a lot of jumping off points that you could, for each page, it looks like has a lot of things you could jump off and read more about. So this is good. Great. Okay, well, thank you, Connie. So what I'll do is I'll get the video up from today on YouTube, and we'll put that out on the list and also on Twitter when it's available, and we'll put the link to this in the YouTube so you all can get there as well. But this is exciting stuff. It's fun to see what other folks have done with the same tools. So great. Okay. Well, I think that's going to bring us to an end. Let me check to make sure we don't have any questions from anyone. So if anyone has any questions, let us know. You can always send questions to redcap@lacats.org, and we're happy to cover those questions in our next webinar and respond immediately as well. So any questions, any ideas you have, please don't hesitate to email us, and we'll plan to see you again at the end of October. If you have a moment and you want to fill out a REDCap feedback survey, there's a link there, as well as our training resources link. And if you don't have REDCap and you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link to the Vanderbilt.edu REDCap demo facility, which will give you REDCap for 1 week. You can try it out, kick the tires, see if REDCap's right for you before committing to joining the consortium and having your own instance or some other means. So that being said, we're actually coming in right under an hour today, which is great. If no one has any other questions, Connie? Megan? Okay.
Nothing from me.
Great. Well, thank you. I think today's been great, and I really appreciate the presentation. I think that was great, Megan. And we will talk to you all online and see you again in October.
All right. Thanks a lot, David. Thanks, Connie.
Great.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.